The Villisca Axe Murder House looks exactly like your grandmother's place. Small, white, farmhouse, quiet street, the kind of house where you'd expect lemonade on the porch, not a cold case. You've probably seen the paranormal investigation footage where people with EMF readers walk around looking spooked, but here's what you didn't think about. 8 people were murdered here in a single night in 1912. 6 of them were children, and the case was never officially solved. Never. The crime scene was contaminated almost immediately because curious locals just walked through it before investigators arrived. In human terms, that means there was never a clean chain of evidence, which means whoever did this potentially walked free. Iowa also has no legal requirement for sellers to disclose violent death history on a property, so this house changed private hands multiple times before someone finally decided to turn it into a paid overnight destination. And then in 2014, a guest stabbed himself during a paranormal stay. That's documented in Iowa court records, which is somehow the detail that makes the whole thing worse. The scariest thing about Villisca isn't ghosts. It's that you can book a night there right now for roughly $400 in an unsolved mass murder location. That one's scary because of what happened. The next one is scary because of what kept happening across decades to completely different families. The Amityville Horror House in New York is famous enough to have launched over 20 films, and you've definitely seen at least one of them. But here's the thing, you saw the movie and missed the actual documented history, which is disturbing enough without a single supernatural element. In 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. killed 6 members of his own family inside this Dutch colonial on the water. That part is not disputed. What came after on the Lutz family's claims of paranormal activity was disputed in court and is widely considered embellished. But it doesn't really matter anymore because the media machine built around this house made it permanently impossible to own normally. Later, owners physically changed the address and structurally altered the distinctive quarter-moon windows specifically to stop the constant stream of strangers photographing their house. They've called the police on trespassers more times than anyone wants to count. The horror movie made the murders globally famous. The current owners just bought a waterfront house and now live inside a tourist attraction they didn't ask for. That's a house that became dangerous because of fame. The next one was dangerous long before anyone was paying attention. The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose looks like Victorian fever dream architecture. 160 rooms, doors that open into walls, staircases that run directly into ceilings, and if you've seen photos, you probably thought it was an art project. You saw the weirdness, but you didn't understand why it exists. Sarah Winchester, heiress to the Winchester rifle fortune, reportedly directed construction of this mansion herself for roughly 38 years with no architect. Allegedly guided by nightly seance sessions, and workers reportedly built around the clock for decades. The 1906 earthquake trapped her inside a finished room because the door frame warped shut and she had to be pulled out through a window. At its peak, the mansion reportedly had somewhere between 500 and 600 rooms before earthquake damage required demolishing sections. What's left is still 160. This house isn't haunted by ghosts. It's haunted by one woman's extremely well-funded psychological unraveling, and the building is the physical evidence. One obsessive builder is one kind of story. The next house is dangerous because multiple people died there and almost nobody remembers the real reason why. The LaLaurie Mansion in New Orleans sits in the French Quarter. It's gorgeous, it's worth millions, and yes, Nicolas Cage owned it briefly before losing it to foreclosure. You've probably seen the American Horror Story version and thought you understood the history, but the actual documented record is significantly worse than the TV adaptation. Delphine LaLaurie tortured and killed enslaved people in the upper floors of this building in the 1830s. The fire in 1834 that exposed it was reportedly started by an enslaved woman who had been chained to the kitchen stove. She reportedly chose to burn the house rather than continue. That fire and the subsequent discovery were covered by multiple New Orleans newspapers at the time, and those accounts are archived and publicly accessible. Since then, the building has been a school, an apartment complex, and a private residence. It's currently private property on one of the most tourist-saturated streets in America. The house is worth millions. The history is not a deterrent to the real estate market. That is genuinely the most disturbing part. That one is dark history dressed in beautiful architecture. The next one looks like it's been forgotten, because essentially it has been. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia, is a massive Gothic Civil War-era structure, the largest hand-cut stone building in the United States, and it absolutely looks like the set of a horror film. You've seen the ghost tour content, but you didn't see the state records documenting a facility designed for 250 patients that was housing over 2,000 people by the mid-20th century. That's roughly 8 times its intended capacity, and that's in government documents. Deaths were recorded with causes like exhaustion from mania, which was essentially a bureaucratic way of writing, "We don't want to explain this." Lobotomies were performed here. It operated from 1864 to 1994, was purchased privately in 2007, and sections of the building are still closed to visitors today because of structural collapse risk. This place isn't haunted by anything supernatural. It's haunted by 130 years of institutional failure that nobody has fully accounted for. A state institution with a documented body count. The next one is a private home, and the family never actually left. The Sally House in Atchison, Kansas, is a modest 2-story house in a completely normal residential neighborhood that your Airbnb algorithm would rate 4 stars for the kitchen. It became famous after a 1990s TV paranormal investigation. But here's what most people missed. The Pickman family, who rented the house in the early 1990s, reported physical scratches appearing on the husband's body, objects moving, and fires starting spontaneously. And they reported all of this to researchers before any television production was involved. The researchers interviewed them before a camera crew ever showed up, which is the detail that makes this case slightly harder to dismiss than average. The house is still a rental. Atchison markets itself as America's most haunted city, largely off the back of this one address. You can stay there tonight. That one's disputed but documented. The next one isn't disputed at all. The deaths are public record, and so is the institutional attempt to look away from them. The Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, is endlessly photographed. Spanish moss, antebellum architecture, the whole aesthetic, and it operates as a bed and breakfast and ghost tour venue. You've seen the beautiful property shots, but here's what you didn't count. How many deaths here are documented versus how many were invented for tourism? The 1871 murder of owner William Winter, shot on the front steps and dying inside the house, is in the St. Francisville historical record. The much more famous Chloe story, the ghost of an enslaved woman who allegedly poisoned the family, has no historical documentation and is widely considered a later invention added to make the tours more compelling. The real documented history of enslaved people who lived and died on this property is largely absent from the ghost tour narrative. The fake history is what they sell tickets for. That inversion is its own category of disturbing, manufactured haunting layered over real history. And the last one doesn't need any manufacturing at all. The Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield is an enormous Gothic prison that you've seen in 1,000 Shawshank Redemption content pieces. And yes, it's visually extraordinary, but here's what the filming location posts always skip. 215 people died inside this building over its 94-year operating history. The facility was so overcrowded and the conditions so inhumane that a federal lawsuit forced it to close in 1990. The superintendent's wife died here from an accidental gun discharge. 2 guards were killed by escaping inmates, and sections of the building are still structurally unstable today. 215 documented deaths. That's in Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction records. It is simultaneously a filming location for a movie about human resilience, and a building a federal judge ruled was being used to treat people unconstitutionally. Both of those facts are true at the same time. None of these 8 places need ghosts. The axe murders? The torture chambers, the overcrowded asylums, the plantation violence, all of it is sitting in public archives, court filings, and newspaper records that anyone can find. Not the ghost tour version. The real one is always worse, and it's always more interesting. If this kind of thing is your thing, subscribe, because there's more where this came from.